All right, good to see everyone. So this morning, we've heard a number of very interesting things already. I want to ask about Bible translation in particular, and I want to talk about taking stock of AI. Of course, I mean machine learning by AI, but and also using some large language models. But let's be precise, like we were invited to yesterday. So I would say that AI is now, it's here. We can talk about breaks, as James mentioned, which is a valuable discussion. But I think if we look at the Gutenberg moment that he described, we don't really talk about breaks when it comes to publishing and paper and the printing press and all of its sort of subsequent iterations. Those things have happened, and it's come and gone, and people have published really bad things. But we've also published a lot of Bibles. We've published a lot of good things. And I think we're going to be able to do that with generative AI, or word calculators, as I like to call them. We've had calculators for a while. Now we have word calculators. I want to ask, have we really thought about the implications for Bible translation? Have we really thought about them? We've thought about ways to apply them to what we're currently doing. But I love this quote from Henry Ford. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said, faster horses. Well, if we ask what you want from AI for Bible translation, you might be thinking, I want faster checking of this sort. I want faster drafting in this way. But maybe we need to step back a little bit and say, and ask ourselves, what does it actually take to translate the Bible today? Because a lot has changed, and a lot has changed even in the last year or two. And so we need to ask this question, and we need to ask it with openness. What does it take? It doesn't necessarily take everything that we have been doing. Maybe it does. Maybe we can do those things faster, and maybe in some contexts it does. Probably the answer is going to be, it depends. But I want to talk about a few different aspects of how AI has and can impact Bible translation. And the first thing I want to talk about is the process of Bible translation, which I've been learning about a lot as I've been working on some of these tools. And this is the kind of picture. I didn't ask anybody for confirmation about whether this is the way it works. This is the picture I've picked up along the way. And it's that we first draft a Bible, then the translator will check it themselves, then they'll bring it to their team will check it, then an external consultant will come and check it, and then finally you have the publishing process, which involves typesetting and other editorial checks. But I've also heard, and I can understand that this process involves some bottlenecks. So what happens is we get some drafts, some nice fancy new drafts, and then we want to bring those drafts, once they're completed, to the team. Well, that creates a bit of a bottleneck or pile-up because we have to wait on the team to get done with the checking. Then we've got to wait on the consultant to get done with the checking. And then we've got to wait again on the publishers to get done with the publishing. And this is a process we're using, and it's working because we're publishing Bibles. But now the question is, does AI mean, well, let's do more of that, but let's just do it faster? Well, the problem is we've got bottlenecks there. Bottlenecks can only go so fast. If you put more sand into an hourglass, the time is still going to pass at exactly the same rate because you've got a narrow neck on an hourglass. And so instead of moving faster, we're just going to get more of these and more of these. We're going to get all these drafts, churned out. But then that will just cause a greater pileup downstream. And that's what could happen. Now, I want to suggest that this is, if we're thinking about the process of Bible translation, we might think about it as, this kind of process we're planning for. We set the course, and off we go, and we fly in a nice straight line. But everyone looking at this, you can just turn your head for a moment, a little bit to your right, and notice what's happened. It's still straight, but now it's going a different direction. When you're flying, if you're 1 degree off of your path, then every 60 miles, you're going to be 1 mile out from your destination. And so if we have this nice linear process, well, if I do drafting and I complete a lot of drafting, and then I do checking, well, I might be way off my mark. We don't fly airplanes like that. We don't write code like that. Hopefully we don't. It's not like I draft my entire app, and then after about 6 months, I sit down and I say, okay, I'm ready to compile it, try compiling it. And then I hit, let's say 1,000 errors in a row, and by that time I've completely, we've moved on to another project. I think that's called the waterfall approach. Well, the solution, of course, with flying, as we know, is to steer. You have to steer. And what's really interesting about steering is it implies that you hit quality problems all the time. You hit them constantly, but you fix them really quickly. You fix them right away, and then it doesn't cause you to be way off your mark once you're 1,000 miles into the journey. And so I want to suggest that as we're thinking about how AI can apply to the Bible translation process, we can think about a slightly different kind of process, one where drafting and checking are actually the same step. Because what's the difference between drafting and redrafting based on feedback? Well, they're kind of similar, right? I'm writing or I'm revising. When I write papers, that's the process I follow. I check stuff as I go. I don't quote everybody, all the scholars I need to quote, and then later I go and check. Did they say that? Well, if I used AI to write my papers, then that's how it would work, I suppose. Gotta go and do some quality checking. And then publishing and feedback, they can be actually part of the same process. We can iteratively publish. And again, this implies that we're gonna hit lots of quality problems. AI drafting, as you know, will produce low quality results a lot of the time. But if that's actually part of the process, then we can embrace that and recognize, oh, this is actually helping us steer the translation process. And that's helping us get to that publishing stage a lot faster. So, what does it actually mean to steer the translation process? Well, one way is you provide the right indicators. You provide the right indicators for translators. You saw some of this with Damien's presentation yesterday with links, a framework for how do we actually show translators the information they need to know so they can check their work immediately. Another way is with ingesting information. If everything you need to learn can be asked in a social context, in a chat kind of context, that's one way you can steer the translator, because they don't have to sort of embark on this journey of researching a problem that they don't even know they don't know how to ask questions about. They can just start querying and start trying to suggest, well, is this what that means? Is this what this word means? And they can get answers that are based on the resources that they have downloaded or in their project. Everything you want to fix. If everything you want to fix just shows up as a kind of squiggly line, that's how, you just heard about Microsoft Word and little red squiggly lines. Well, what that's intended to show you is this is an unknown spelling. Now, of course, that means we actually need tools that are designed to deal with languages that don't have a dictionary. They don't have a built-in spell checker. So we have to build those things as the translator is working. If you use AI for writing, you want it to show up as simple inline suggestions. And then, of course, you want an AI co-pilot to do the heavy lifting for you. Anything that is repetitive in the process is a process or a piece of the process that's ripe for AI innovation. So there's a number of different ways that we could apply that, whether it's on demand for a verse, or lots of different versions of a verse that are being drafted, or a complete zero draft, a draft that's meant to be changed. So let's talk about progress a little bit. I'll skip over, I suppose I'll skip over a few of my slides here, or I'll go quickly over them, but you can always follow up with them later. I'll have a link at the end. But I want to just highlight especially this quote. And the goal of this translator's co-pilot that we've been building is to make the translation technology disappear as much as possible, so that you don't have to pay attention to it as much as you might have. You don't have to spend a lot of time learning how to use it. You do have to spend some time. Of course, everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. But I really have been inspired by this quote here, that the most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of your everyday life and work. And so we've kind of adopted this approach where what you need to see here is there's this AI agent here. This is a word calculator, of course. There's no intelligence there, but it makes quasi-decisions. And the key to this whole thing is it doesn't matter how complicated things are on the left or the right side, yeah, the right side of the process. You can make it really complicated under the hood, but what the user sees is just a simple interface. They only see what's relevant to them. They don't need to know about all the steps that went into getting you there. You do want them to be able to inspect that, as James mentioned as well. You want to be able to explain what the process was, but they don't have to look into it every time. They don't have to see it all happening. Now, if you imagine a cockpit in an airplane and a co-pilot, you notice that a co-pilot also has instruments in front of them. They have instruments and controls. Because a co-pilot has to be able to do something. You need some basic tools. And so a lot of what we've been building over the past few months while we've been working on this is some basic tools that a co-pilot can actually leverage. And so we've been working on what we've called the Codex Scripture Editor. Now, those who are programmers in the room will appreciate this. We took VS Code, Microsoft VS Code, and we forked VS Code because we said, well, this is a pretty good text editor. It's actually a world-class text editor. And so if we just take this software and copy it, it gives us a lot of opportunity. And I can see that the next transition here is going to look pretty bad because it's exported to PowerPoint. Ooh, that's terrible. But what we've done is we tried to build tools for that steering process. But the other thing we've done is we've tried to adopt not only an open source approach, but an open ownership approach. So what we're doing, we're putting together this app. It's intended to be a white labeled app. So anybody from any church or organization around the world can actually take it, make their own copy, slap their own label on it, and they can not only work on it, but they can own it. It can be theirs. They can make whatever decisions they need to make because they're the ones who are closest to the problem, and they know what decisions they need to make. You can go to that website and download it. I got a QR code at the end as well. And I won't spend too much time on this, but essentially there's a repository, VS Codium, that builds the VS Code app, and we have forked that, and we're right now we have a second version of the Scribe Scripture Editor. You can look more into this if you want, or talk to me, or you can talk to Joel Matthew as well, who's here. And the idea is that we want other people to be able to make some other copy that they want. If they need to have total ownership over whatever app they're using, go for it. And every extension we build for this app will be compatible across any instance of it. So I'll just gloss over a couple features here, but this is spell checking that's happening. You notice if there's an unknown spelling, so there, spelling genealogy with an O, that's how it sounds. So obviously it should be spelled like that, but it's not. It gets corrected here because we've seen that word genealogy before. Of course, that's for English, but this actually works, as you saw with the Greek room presentation yesterday, with low-resource languages as well. There's more and more pieces of the Greek room that we're pulling into this spell checker. And it really doesn't matter, again, how complicated it is under the hood. All you see is this little squiggly line, and you can see, oh, that's an unknown spelling. Now, in this case, there's two simple checks going on here all the time. So one of them is if you start drafting a sentence and it looks really strange compared to how you've been translating so far, we'll try to detect those anomalies and just let the user know about that. Now, they could ignore it and say, no, I really intended to do that. That's fine. But we'll try to catch those things so that if you make a simple mistake like, oh, yeah, I forgot to put anything in that verse. I was going to come back to it and totally forgot. Well, you've got a little error message for you. And the other one is that if you duplicate verse references or you put them out of order, you get a little indicator as well. And this all happens instantly as soon as you make the mistake, as it were. You can also do semantic search on the translation memory. So as you're drafting, you can, if you highlight a word or you put some text into that text box there, we're going to work on the UI. I'll just say some of the UX and UI people there are cringing because we built it so quickly. But that wasn't, we want to make it as simple as possible. But the idea here is that you can select text, and it will search through your draft and find the most semantically similar passages so that you can compare. Well, how did we translate something like that before? And I think we've already done something like this. You heard yesterday about identifying mixed scripts. So this is the wildebeest library that Ulf has made, and we just stuck it in there. So if you start typing Hebrew, it's going to tell you, hey, you've mostly got Latin characters there, and now you've got Hebrew. Are you sure you want that? And then some of you have heard about the Bible Aquifer. You can look that up if you haven't. It's supposed to be a large repository of data localized into a lot of languages. I just hard-coded English as the language for this instance. But if you have VS Code on your computer right now, you can go to the extension store and look up Bible Aquifer and download it and try it out. And then, go find the repository and contribute to it so it supports images, because I never rendered those. You can also download localized resources from Unfolding Word. The Unfolding Word team worked on this. And actually the Scribe team, they took this component for downloading localized resources, and they pulled it over and just dropped it into VS Code. Essentially, you can take some React component or React app. Sorry, I'm talking to programmers now. And you can say, you can go and ask ChatGPT, hey, turn this into a VS Code extension for me. And it'll basically walk you through it, and maybe it'll even work out of the box. This, I had to split it up because it was pretty tall and the font was small. Sorry about that. But there's a chat bot that's built in that has access to your translation. And so you can ask questions, and it'll search for relevant context in your project, and then you can chat with it and ask for suggestions. And I put in there, maybe Bible.ai could power that chat bot so that it can be accessing a lot of good resources and be nicely aligned with the purposes of Bible translation. But this is actually running on a local LLM on my computer. Many of you will have computers that can run large language models on them. We just run this app called LM Studio. It's a free app. You download it, you download a model, hit start server, and suddenly you've got your own local ChatGPT running. And you can swap out models if you want one that works for your language better. But we've also, with the large language models, you can see here that you can have translation suggestions. You won't be able to read it, but what you can see is there's some ghostwriting going on. And if you hit tab, it will accept the suggestion. Or you can just keep typing and ignore it. And this is all coming through offline and privately, and it's based on the context of your project. Now that's English, which seems easy to do. So I thought I should throw in an example of, this is Talk Pisin here. If you start typing Talk Pisin, it'll start suggesting Talk Pisin. Now, the lower resourced the language, and the less you've put into your project so far, the less good the quality of the results are going to be. But it's already you've got something started there. Now, if you can't run a large language model on your computer, because maybe you've got a Windows computer, no, just kidding, an old one, there's also statistical predictions. And I won't go into the details, but Daniel Losi is here, one of the developers I work with, and he made some remarkable, really cool, really fast statistical prediction models or tools that are always based on your project. So as soon as you type, so he types generations here, as soon as you do that, the statistics are already updated, and as soon as you keep typing your next verse, you've got better results already. Some of the benefits of this approach that we've tried to emphasize for the use case we have in particular for piloting it is it needed to be offline. So it needed to work offline. Only the Bible Aquifer is online because that's connecting to an API. But all of the other things are working offline. Local, they're private, and you can sync your data up with the cloud because that's built into VS Code as well. If you do want to run it and not have it on your computer, you can actually run VS Code completely in a browser as well if confiscation of a device is a concern. So another thing is we've tried to keep a just-in-time approach that whatever you need, it's there just when you need it. You don't get overwhelmed with, well, I have to browse through. I've got some big lexicons on my shelf, and I often don't even open them. I just search the internet because it's just less intimidating. Well, no, it's actually faster. And then another thing is we always wanted the tools to be based on the current project state. So I always think of the analogy of a pond, that when you touch a little pond, the ripples will spread out and fill the whole pond. And I think translating should be just like that. Anytime a translator makes a change or interacts with their project, the changes should propagate out to the rest of the project and the rest of the tools, so that all the tools are always aware of the current state of your project, and they're always aware of the current state of your translation and every change you've made. And also we're trying to focus on tools for zero resource languages. So we don't assume that we know anything about the language that you're translating into. So we don't have a massive list of spelling words and all that. That all has to get built on the fly. And so these are ways we're trying to implement steering in translation. And I'll briefly mention a little bit of the potential here. So where could this take us? Well, I don't probably need to convince a lot of you, but this is going to really help accelerate, I think. This AI is going to help accelerate church-led translation. That the churches will own the projects, maybe even own the tools, and they'll be able to translate faster when they need to without asking permission from anybody. We're working towards truly multimodal translation, not just, well, sometimes you do it in audio, sometimes you do it in text, but if you start with audio, maybe you want to move towards text eventually. Or if you have text, it's often beneficial to have an audio Bible as well, as we know. So you should be able to do both, and the translator should be empowered to do both of those things. And that's the goal is to translate for human life, right? Because how many different modes do we actually communicate in? Well, like many different modes. So we ought to be translating for all of those modes if possible. And I didn't mention multilingual translation, but the Bible, of course, is a multilingual document. We impose one language on a translation, but it's actually got 3 languages in it to start with. And iterative publishing is, I think, a very important thing, that as soon as you finish a chapter, it should be able to fire up to some particular distribution channel that works for that community, for that team, for whatever they're doing, for people to actually review. And this should happen automatically. The feedback should come right back, and maybe your AI co-pilot gets to read that feedback as it's suggesting drafts and gets to improve what it's suggesting for you. And then, the model is not a once-in-a-lifetime leather-bound Bible necessarily, but it's a multi-generational Bible. And as you know, languages change, so it's always a moving target. So when we think about publishing, if we're only thinking in terms of getting that final leather-bound copy, well, in a couple generations, we're going to need another one because people won't be able to read it or understand it. This slows down the more literate the culture is. It slows down the process a bit, but as you know, if you try to read, I have a Discord channel that I'm on with my youth group, and I didn't realize how many and varied the applications were of the skull emoji. The skull emoji. I've learned so much about the skull emoji. It's very helpful. It's great. I'm so glad English is like that now, or emoji. And then maybe you want to publish a leather-bound Bible. Well, if we have an open ownership model, not just a share-alike model, because if you have a share-alike model, well, you're not allowed to sell that. But if you want to publish a leather-bound Bible, you've got to offset the cost somehow. Now, in many cases, that won't be a problem. But if it's a public domain AI-drafted text, then nobody even needs to ask. It's theirs if they want it. They can change it, adapt it, fix it, and try again as much as they want. So that the idea would be that ownership decisions rest in the hands of the people to whom it is most important. And so my question is, are you open to the changes that AI can bring? And I've just mentioned a number of things, but there's so much more we could talk about. So there's a little summary there of the discussion, and you can go to this website and download Scribe, this new version of Scribe for yourself and try it out. We are fixing the onboarding process or the project initialization process. A lot of this is in progress, so when you encounter problems, which you will, you can email me. And we want to hear what kind of problems people have installing it on different machines. And we've got, Arch Linux is a known problem, okay? If you have Arch Linux, you don't have a global Python environment, so, you can actually email me too. I know how to fix it, so anyways. All right. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it.